The film begins in a small West African community where young children are playing and carrying a television around. Agu, a joyful, active yet mischievous young boy, attempts to sell an imaginary TV to a police officer, but his first attempt fails. In his second attempt, Agu successfully sells the imaginary television to a soldier in exchange for food. Agu lives with his father, mother, grandfather, and 2 siblings, who are currently in a buffer zone for safety due to the war in their nation. Agu's Christian family stays positive and happy despite the rumors of attacks of a civil war. His father, who used to be an elementary school teacher, helps find a place for outsiders to live in their small community. One day, Agu and other men stop vehicles by putting a branch from a tree in the middle of the road to beg for money. A crazy old woman reprimands them for the wrong way of receiving money and calls them thieves. Agu and his family went back home, and the family was having a nice dinner until his father discovered what he did to the TV. The next morning, the villagers learned about the war and how near it was getting to them. As they needed to leave their village to travel to the capital, where it would be safer, they held a meeting and decided to prioritize evacuating the women and children, while leaving the men behind to safeguard their ancestral house. Agu's father arranges safe transportation for his wife and 2 youngest children, but Agu was unable to board due to a lack of space, so he must remain with his father and an older brother. His mother promises to look for them after the war is over. The day finally came when the government army entered Agu's village and a conflict between government soldiers and the insurgent group broke out. Stuck in the middle of the civil war, Agu's family and other locals strive to find a safe place to hide to avoid the crossfire in their small town. While they are hiding, Agu's father examines the situation outside but reveals their location to the government troops, causing their location to be hit by a cannon. Panic sets in. Some of the men open the door, but as they run away, government soldiers shoot at them, murdering them instantly. Agu's family and other men surrender to government forces. The abducted men, including Agu's family, were told to kneel while holding their hands up. They accuse them of being members of the insurgent group, but Agu's father explains that they are simply locals guarding their home. They then come across the insane old woman, and the government troops question her whether she knew any of these men, to which she says that she did not and that they could be spies for the rebellious group. As a result, government forces sentence them to death. But before they start shooting, Agu's father orders him and his older brother to run away as fast as they can. The government troops opened fire on the captured group, murdering everyone, including Agu's father. Agu's older brother is also murdered, leaving him as the sole survivor. Agu wanders across the forest for days, looking for a way to reach his mother. One day, he finds himself caught up in a battle between government soldiers and an insurgent group. He notices a child and attempts to follow him, but the child jumps at him, causing him to fall to the ground. He discovers an insurgent group led by what they called the Commandant, and the child he meets is named Strika. The Commandant discovers that Agu ran away from the government forces who murdered his father and elder brother. He then tells Agu that he will be under his wings from now on, preparing him to be a warrior and avenge his family's murder. Agu marches back to their base camp together with the group. 2IC, one of the tenured soldiers, placed Agu on the wings of a young man to lead him in their motions. Agu was initially unwelcome because he was not yet a soldier and the food they had was just for soldiers. The next morning, Agu was already in the training group, learning how to handle a gun in preparation for becoming a soldier. He still hopes to find his mother soon and believes that what 2IC said about the war ending soon since they were winning is true. The Commandant also engages the group in a conversation on what their mission is and what rights the government forces are taking away from them and their family. After the completed training, they then gather all the new soldiers, including Agu, to perform a ritual for their formal acceptance to their group called Native Defense Forces. Afterwards, the Commandant orders the group to go on a mission to clean the area, as they will be moving their base camp. The next day, Agu and the group hide behind a bridge as the enemy's vehicle approaches. The ambush mission was successful, and as they were assessing the vehicle for supplies, the Commandant told Agu to murder the remaining captured enemy with a jungle bolo. The Commandant pushed Agu, despite his youth and innocence, to end the unfortunate man's life. He swings the bolo to the man's head. Strika assists Agu in ending the man's life. As a result, the Commandant believes Agu is prepared, and 2IC hands him a weapon. Agu pukes by the side of the road, still unable to comprehend he murdered a man. Back at the camp, Strika offers Agu a bundle of clothes he took from the enemies. Agu seeks to learn more about Strika, but he only responds in signed language. While the commandant was motivating his squad by telling them about a location he knows with plenty of food and ladies for fun, they received word from outsiders that their village had been taken over by another rebel group. Their group, led by 2IC, went to recover the village and were successful. That night, the commandant commends Agu for his bravery and tells him that he sees himself in Agu as a young boy. He also emphasizes to Agu the need to be a good follower before becoming a leader. He invites Agu to his room for a night of pleasure. Strika assists him as he struggles to leave the hut. The next morning, Preacher, one of the troops, offers Agu a brown to soothe his nerves. They then went to another small town to claim the territory. The NDF group murders anyone in town, even if they are civilians. Meanwhile, Agu and the group notice a woman and a child hiding in a cabinet. Agu first assumes it is his mother, but later finds it isn't and calls her a witch. Agu murders the woman by shooting at her head when she is being abused by one of the soldiers. He asks God if he sees what they're doing and prays for his direction. They successfully claimed the village and held some of the residents hostage by placing a grenade in their mouths. The commandant then receives a letter from the Supreme Commander directing him to meet with him as soon as possible. The bombs exploded as they were departing, murdering the remaining captive peasants. He then sends one as a messenger to notify other residents that they will be returning to the town. He also officially adds Strika and Agu to his group. When they arrive in the Supreme Commander's town, they are greeted by a deputy. A foreigner was also waiting to meet with him. When he is summoned and another foreigner meets with the Supreme Commander, the commandant loses patience. The deputy apologizes and leads them to a room where they fall asleep. That morning, the commandant was finally able to meet the Supreme Commander, who offered his men some food while they waited. The commandant and 2IC attend the meeting with the Supreme Commander, who updates them on the developments in this civil war now that the United Nations is involved. He informs the commandant that 2IC will now be positioned as the commandant in charge of his unit, and the commandant himself is promoted to Deputy Chief of Security. He instructs 2IC to leave the room as he expresses his displeasure with the alterations being implemented. The Supreme Commander reminds him that he has no option because he is merely a soldier. On his last day with the group, the commandant sends them to a place full of women, owned by someone he refers to as Mama. 2IC wanted to check on their injured friends, but the commandant insisted on him staying to celebrate his promotion. Except for Stricken and Agu, who are still young, they'd all take one woman with them. A few moments later, a few troops transport 2IC, who was accidentally shot by the woman he was with using his own gun. He directs Stricken and Agu to assassinate the woman and the club's owner. When they return to the base camp, Agu checked on 2IC's status. Before 2IC dies, he tells Agu that what they're doing is pointless and blames the commandant for what's going on. That night, the commandant informs his troops that the Supreme Commander has become an enemy and that they must acquire their own resources. Agu then knows that the only way the battle will end is through death. They were on their way to the base camp when they were attacked by government forces, who murdered many of their troops. They are lost in the wilderness and are attempting to live by pushing forward. Strika was unable to move, and Agu discovered that he had been shot. Despite his weakness and exhaustion, he carries Strika for as long as he can, but Strika collapses and dies along the way. Agu mourns the death of his friend, but he has no choice except to continue and leave his body behind. The war continues, and as one of the troops requests that Agu bring him more ammunition, he discovers that they have run out of bullets and that the majority of the soldiers are growing ill due to a lack of food. He informs the commandant about the situation. Preacher expresses his desire to leave the group, and the rest of the group shares his sentiment. He claims it has been months since they received any gold, food, drink, or even bullets. They were all eager to hand over their weapons to the government. The commandant tries to scare them with their decision, warning them that if they surrender, they will end up in jail. Preacher points his gun at the commandant because he refuses to let go of his soldiers, but the commandant tells him that he won't be able to shoot because he's out of ammo. Agu raises his weapon toward the commandant, informing him that he still has ammunition. He dares Agu to pull the trigger a few times before asking if he will also surrender. When Agu answers yes, he stops pointing his gun and lets his troop escape, certain that they will return to him after realizing their mistake. He'd assumed Agu would stay, but he sees him leave with the rest of the group. Agu and his companions surrendered to UN troops. They were placed in a rehabilitation institution where they are receiving professional counseling and assistance. Though the setting in which he now lives is peaceful, Ig nevertheless suffers from nightmares as a result of the trauma caused by the war. Preacher and another young soldier from the NDF group are also seen leaving the center to return to the jungle and battle alongside the commandant. One morning, a professional approaches Agu and asks him to share his memories of the Civil War. He doesn't want her to think he's an evil person, so he tells her about his family instead. Slowly but steadily, Agu adjusts and copes with his surroundings, learns how to get along with other youngsters, and becomes the joyous, lively, mischievous boy he once was and always should have been. That's it for today's recap. Give this video a like and subscribe for more exciting movie recaps. See you next time.